everyone, and welcome to this week's Wildlife Wednesday Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Tenley Thompson, and I've got some great video from all over the greater Yellowstone ecosystem to share with you guys this week. The way this is going to work is our naturalists and guides have been out taking great video all week. We're going to show that to you and then give you a chance to win $10 to our EcoTours gift store with our trivia question of the week. At the end of the broadcast, I'll be answering your wildlife biology, naturalist, and nature questions related questions live. So if you've got a good question, feel free to ask in the comment section and I'll see if I can't get you an answer right at the end of the broadcast. So let's go ahead and get started. I thought it would be fun to go ahead and talk about everybody's favorite hoofed mammal in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, moose, first. And I asked my good friend Laura to tell us a little bit about what she knows about that animal. So let's check in.
Hi, this is Laura. I'm joining you from Moose's home down by a riverside or a riparian area in western Wyoming. Behind me is a willow bush, which is one of Moose's favorite foods to eat throughout the year. The word moose comes from a Native American word, or Algonquin word, which translates into English as the one who strips the bark or the twig eater. That describes exactly what moose love to do. They'll browse on the twigs from willow bushes like this one just behind me, or cottonwood tree limbs. Cottonwoods are the tall, coarse bark trees that also grow down by the river's edge or in swamps or bogs. And also a plant called bitterbrush. Bitterbrush grows on the sagebrush flats of Jackson Hole, and that's a favorite wintertime browse of moose. The moose prefer cold climates. Jackson Hole, with its heavy snowfall and cold conditions, is a perfect place for moose to hang out. Last winter we received about 500 inches of winter snows in the mountains. Those long legs on the moose help them wade through the deep snow, and their wide spreading hoof acts kind of like snowshoes so that they can stay afloat in those deep snow conditions. The moose is the largest deer species in the world. Their Latin name or family name is Cervidae, which refers to all deer, including elk, white-tailed deer, mule deer, which we have here in Wyoming, and also caribou. Moose, being the largest member of the deer family, could weigh up to about 1,500 pounds. Down here in Wyoming, I feel like a large-sized moose would weigh about 1,200 pounds. Moose cannot sweat, so like on a hot day, I might start to sweat. I'll fan myself to stay cool. Moose can't sweat, so they prefer to stay in the shade. They'll be most active at dawn and dusk hours, so in the cool of the morning or right before sunset time. You might see them down in a wetland or right along a riverside browsing on those willow plants in twilight. The female moose would give birth to their newborn baby calves in late May or early June. A moose calf stays with its mother for almost a full year. She'll keep that calf or perhaps twin calves by her side for almost a year's time. So if they're born in mid-May, that means until the following spring. A male moose is known as a bull moose. A female moose is known as a cow. Bull moose are the ones who grow a big, impressive, palmated set of antlers each and every summer. And just like any deer, moose being the biggest deer in the world, they will lose their antlers over the winters to conserve energy and then regrow a bigger, better set of antlers over the summer, from April through early September, to show off for the female moose, cow moose, during the mating season.
So a big thanks to our biologist Laura, as well as Josh and our naturalist Elise, who did a great job with those videos this week. Elise is actually joining us as our naturalist guide who's in the comment section this week. So when you hear, when you see her typing in the comment section, that's Elise for you. The two of us are kind of coordinating tonight, and that baby moose footage was hers. So let us know where you are watching from. That's always a big highlight of the week for me, to see all the amazing places that this video travels. So comment in the comment section where you're watching from. It's really fun to see far and wide. Even if you're coming and watching from Jackson, Wyoming, I'd love to know about it. We had a nice view of Grizzly Bear 610 this week, and our guide Josh got some great footage of her in the wildflowers. For those of you guys who don't know, Grizzly Bear 610 is about 12 years old. She has two 2-year-old cubs, and she's the daughter of very famous Grizzly Bear 399. Let's check in. Josh got this great view of Grizzly Bear 610 and her two 2-year-old cubs in northern Grand Teton this week. 610 has been very busy digging up the starchy bulbs and great vegetation food resources that are available as we get into peak wildflower bloom in late July. The subadult cubs were eagerly following Mom around, learning what food resources were best to eat by following her example. She's definitely turning out to be such a great mom, and it was a real pleasure to see the three of them out and about this week. So, a great view of grizzly bears and their cubs this week, hopefully with a few less mosquitoes. There were a lot of mosquitoes out in those wildflowers last week when I got an opportunity to see her. But this week it looks like the mosquitoes have died down. The reason this is kind of crazy is usually in Jackson Hole we get like a week and a half, 2 weeks max of mosquitoes. That's it. For everyone who lives places where you get mosquitoes all the time, sorry to hear about it. This year it's been so wet, we've had like 3 weeks of mosquitoes, and I can barely stand it. So if anybody's got any good natural repellent remedies, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments section. But in the meanwhile, I see that Lee is joining us from Washington, D.C., which is my former hometown. So hi, Lee. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for everybody else joining us as well. We've got some great footage of Comet Neowise. Have you had a chance to see it yet? Do you have any pictures? Post one in the comment section. I'd love to see them. Last week we did a video where I showed you some of the pictures I had gotten of Comet Neowise. This week our EcoTours photographer Josh has gotten some really phenomenal views. So let's check that out.
Hello everybody, Josh with EcoTour Adventures here. The last couple days I was able to get out and get some really great shot of the Comet Neowise. It's going to be visible in the northwestern skies for another few days, and it'll be closest to the Earth around the 23rd. So I definitely recommend getting a chance to check it out if you can. Some recommendations: get out of the city, get away from those lights, and look towards the Big Dipper. It's going to be somewhat below the Big Dipper. It's getting higher and higher in the sky every day. A few other astrophotography tips. The ideal time here in Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks is somewhere between 10:30 and 11:30 p.m. Southern Grand Teton has been a great option for astrophotography locations with getting the Tetons in the background. Make sure you bring your bear spray for that. Use a tripod and about a 2-second shutter delay to stabilize your camera. Shoot as wide of an aperture as possible. The shots that you're seeing here were shot at about 2.8. I was using exposures of 8 to 15 seconds depending to capture the comet and stars. And then also set your ISO to somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000, kind of depending upon how powerful your aperture is, or how fast your camera is rather. And then you can manual focus on the brightest star or ridgeline to get that shot nice and crisp. Right now it's also a great time to shoot the Milky Way, which is kind of coming over north to south right now, looking slightly to to the east, which has been a ton of fun to shoot as well. So hope you get out and enjoy, and I hope you like these photos. Thanks.
So Josh, you've inspired me to go out and get even more pictures of Neowise. Guys, we've got a couple more really good days with this comet, and then it's going to be at least 6,000 years before it comes back into the inner parts of our solar system. So catch it while you can. I have been able to see it easily with my naked eye here in Jackson Hole. I do hear in less dark sky locations closer to cities, a pair of binoculars is going to be really useful for you. Now there's a lot going on in the night sky, and there's some things you definitely don't want to miss. Not only is Neowise going to peak later on this week and into the coming weekend, but Saturn is at opposition this week. Now I know y'all are going, what does that even mean, Tenley? What it means is that Saturn is at its best possible viewing conditions for the next couple years. It's going to be about 4 years before Saturn's this good again. And for those of you guys who are going, whoa, 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 I don't have a telescope. You don't need one. That's what I'm here for. All right, if you look in the sky opposite of where the comet is, okay? So I want you to look on the other side of the sky. Saturn and Jupiter are next to each other, and they're the brightest objects in the sky right now, so they're super really easy to find. You're going to look due west at sunset, and they're going to be out most of the night sitting side by side for most of the summer. You really can't miss them. Even in a really bright location, Jupiter's so bright right now, you can't miss it. Saturn's just a little left and below it. And if you look with a pair of binoculars, you can definitely see some of the larger Galilean moons of Jupiter. And a spotting scope or really high-powered binoculars are definitely going to show you Saturn's rings. So something you definitely should check out, probably the best view of Saturn and those rings we're going to get in the next couple of years, over the next couple of days. If you've got kids or folks in your family, I have to tell you, the first sighting I ever had of the Galilean moons and Saturn's rings was incredibly inspiring to me, and part of the reason I pursued science. Obviously, I fell in love with wolves and grizzlies later and became a wildlife biologist, but my zest for astronomy never faded after those first great views. So take your kids out this week, go get them a view of the comet, because oh my gosh, that comet, and I remember Comet Hale-Bopp having an enormous impact on me. And then, while you're at it, go ahead and take a look at Jupiter and Saturn, even if you're looking with your naked eye. It really is incredible. And do keep in mind, we have a big, beautiful, vivid comet like this, on average every 50 to 72 years. So definitely worth getting outside right around an hour after sunset is probably best. All right, enough about the sky. Let's get back to Earth, because I know what you all have a hankering for, and those are the hoofed mammals of the great Yellowstone ecosystem. Now, in the beginning of the video, we already showed you some moose, but there's a whole lot more to Jackson Hole than moose. So let's check them out.
It was a good week for bull elk in Grand Teton National Park this week. Josh got a good view of this watchful bull elk pretty close to the highway, a good reason to remind everybody to keep their speed down. And then Tyler and I got this great view of a really large bull elk, and you can see some cow elk up in the upper right-hand corner in this field of harebell and grasses in northern Grand Teton. Mike also got some nice views of a big bachelor herd of bulls. All of this is a little unusual simply because bulls are typically at pretty high altitude this time of year. And then Josh was also lucky enough to get some great footage of a Pronghorn Antelope Doe and her 2 fawns, including some nursing behavior, which is really fun. You can see that these fawns are getting pretty big. They're getting so big that they've got to duck a little bit to use mom's udders and get some milk. Bison are always a highlight of any of our morning or evening 4-hour trips out into Grand Teton National Park, and our roof hatches come particularly in handy with this particular animal. It's always really important that you give bison their space, and our roof hatches enable us to get an up-close and personal view while remaining in the safety of a vehicle. You can see that the northern Grand Teton bison herd is really having a great year because of the green, lush grasses. It's unusually green out there this year. There's just so much more to eat. The grass is higher than usual. The wildflowers more vibrant. We've had quite a bit more rain and some late snow conditions. These bison were making their way towards the highway by jumping over this fence, and Laura caught them hopping right over this top rail fence, which is specifically built with no barbed wire on the top rung to make it easier for bison to get over. It's a wildlife-friendly fence in Grand Teton National Park. And what was very funny about this particular incident is that another EcoTours vehicle with naturalist Mike was also nearby getting some great views of these same bison who were walking horizontally to where they were. They were about 100 yards away at this point from these bison, getting a really fun view. And then all of a sudden you can see the bison decided to get a little closer. So that group decided to go ahead and hop in the vehicle and got a very up close and personal look as these bison walked right across the main highway in Grand Teton National Park with a little bit of a bison parade for that particular tour. So pretty fun for Mike and his guests. On another trip this week, Mike was able to capture the females. See the C-shaped horns? That tells us that this group is females, and their calves as they moved around in that lush green grass. But he also was able to catch some of the bulls. See the L-shaped horns? That tells us it's a bull practicing for their annual rut, which typically takes place in August. And you can see these two bison are just playing at it. They're not taking it too seriously yet, but they're definitely getting ready for the annual breeding season. So lots of dust and digging and pawing at the ground and practicing and sharpening up those horns for that annual event.
So a little sneak preview for August when we should be getting some amazing views of rutting bull bison. It is an exciting time to see them running at each other, 30, even 40 miles an hour, full speed, bashing heads in full-blown rut, dust everywhere. It's a pretty exciting time. So hopefully as they get more and more enthusiastic about the coming breeding season, we'll get some more video from that. So a big thank you from our guides Josh, Tyler, Laura, and Mike for those videos this week. Pretty fun stuff. If you've never been out on a trip in our roof hatches, it's pretty cool to see those bison from up above, and definitely a pretty comforting feeling. Now, I figured what we'd do is we'd start big and then we'd get just a little bit smaller. So let's check in with some of our small mammals and birds this week and see what's going on.
Laura and Josh have been keeping an eye on this red-tailed hawk nest for the last few weeks. And it's been fun to see this chick, who's a little bit behind from the red-tailed chicks that Mark had been showing us earlier this summer, finally maturing and gaining some weight. There appears to be just one chick in this nest, which is far more typical of a red-tailed hawk nest. But the chick does seem to be doing really quite well. Josh got a great view of a lesser yellowlegs out in the marshy areas, digging up small insects and snails this week. Lesser yellowlegs are not something that I see all the time, so it really was an exciting sighting as part of a bird-based tour that Josh was doing. Laura got a fun view of a muskrat with their little rat-shaped tails, so this is not a beaver, it's a muskrat, on the banks of Oxbow Bend, where they can quite commonly be seen this time of year. And Kelsey was able to check in with these two sandhill crane parents and their colt, the sandhill crane chick, with some pronghorn antelope lying in the sun behind them.
So, some nice views, but what do you say? Why don't we get a little smaller? You want to get a little smaller? All right, let's do it.
Hello everyone, Josh Menton with Jackson Hole Ecotour Adventures here. I want to talk to you about a recent spotting scope video we got up at Oxbow Bend in Grand Teton National Park. It's pretty awesome. I've had 3 different species of animals line up all in one shot. In the foreground, there's a beaver that had just come out from the willows with fresh branches that it's feeding on. And then right behind that is a juvenile bald eagle. Bald eagles take several years to get that adult white head. And so what you're seeing is a younger bird that is full grown but doesn't have that mature adult white head yet. You'll also notice that there's some fish jumping in the area, which I'm sure that eagle is quite interested in. In the distance behind that are some American white pelicans, an animal I was really surprised to see in Grand Teton initially, but is something that's here every year. They nest up in Yellowstone Lake. Just a good example of how much diversity there can be in a really small space when we're out doing wildlife tours of Grand Teton National Park.
So thanks, Josh, for that trio viewing on Oxbow Bend. Oxbow is always fun. There's always something going on in Oxbow. And if it's not a moose, it's going to be ducks or eagles or birds or pelicans. There's never a bad time. And if none of those things are giving you a good view, the Tetons are spectacular from Oxbow. More on that in a couple minutes. But in the meantime, let's go smaller. You want to go smaller? Let's see what we got.
There's lots of activity this week in the small animal and plant world as well. Sean found a bunch of these lupine blue butterflies, and the wildflowers are unbelievable right now, including large swaths of rabbit brush, my favorite wild rose. We've got lots of harebell, purple and blue out on the hillsides. Sticky geranium is covering the areas of northern Grand Teton National Park. Purple aster in and amongst the woodland areas. And we've also got a big super bloom of mule's ear flowers blooming this year, which has been really neat to see. Laura caught this really cool view of ants getting sap out of a tree and depositing it for later use.
Okay, that makes me wonder if I can go smaller than an ant. I don't have anything smaller for you this week, but let me think on it and see what I can do. I'll see if I can't bring you something smaller in the coming weeks. We like to feature all creatures great and small here on our Wildlife Wednesdays, and a bison's pretty cool, but those wildflowers and butterflies were pretty darn sweet as well. We have beautiful, beautiful butterflies here. Well over 800 species of butterflies in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So many that while I can tell you about the top 30 varieties that I see, I'm stumped all the time. I see butterflies where I have to look them up in a book all the time. There's such variety here, which is really, really fun. If you're into entomology in the insect world, this is a great place to visit. Okay, so pretty fun stuff. I think we definitely have gone through most of what we've got to show you this week, but I've got our trivia question of the week, and then after that I'm going to be answering your questions live. Now remember, if you enjoy these videos, please do give us a like and do share these videos. It helps us when we have good viewership of this to continue to produce these for you. It's not free to do, and we want to provide it as a service to our community and to the world at large. It's super fun for me to do, but sharing is going to make a big difference in our ability to continue to do so. So we don't want to be preachy, but if you are willing to do that and you're up for it, I sure appreciate it, as well as the dedicated viewers every week who come to see me. I feel like we're this really fun Wildlife Wednesday family. So thank you guys for joining us. We were talking a little bit about Oxbow Bend. Our featured item of the week from our Eco Tours gift store is this really, really beautiful photograph from Thomas Mangelson called First Light, with elk crossing just a little bit upstream of Oxbow Bend, but a similar view as Oxbow. You can see that bull elk there in the corner. We started our Eco Tours gift store, which I'm sure Elise will give you guys a link to in the comments section if you're curious. As part of our closure during COVID, the first wave of COVID, we are using it to pay for our employee health insurance. So if you'd like to support our employees, there's amazing artwork by our employees, gunpowder art, stickers, mugs, vases, pillows, all sorts of cool stuff, as well as Stio outdoor wear, jackets and pants, and all sorts of great outdoor wear, and all sorts of surprises, some great photography from our guy Josh, who was showing you those great pictures of the comet. We'll see if we can't talk him into making a comet print for people to purchase as well. well. That one over the Tetons is really amazing. So if you're interested in that, we'll put the link in the comment section for you. But First Light by Thomas Mangelson, probably the most famous wildlife photographer in the world, is our featured item. Now, the way that you can win a $10 gift card to our EcoTours store is you're going to be able to answer our trivia question of the week. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is show you last week's trivia question, and you're more than welcome to answer it in the comment section if you know the answer, but we've already chosen a winner for last week, and then we'll show you this week's trivia question. Go ahead and comment in the comment section for that one as well, and that will get you entered in, if you have the correct answer, to win a gift card to our store, support our employees, and get some cool stuff. For sure. So our question from last week was, is this a black bear or a grizzly bear? So if you've got any guess, go ahead and tell me in the comments section, but I'm going to give you some hints. You never want to use size or color to differentiate your bear species. That's a big, big no-no. So just because it's black does not mean that it's necessarily a black bear. There are plenty of black grizzlies out there. In this case, though, it has very prominent ears, and a grizzly would have such a fuzzy face that its ears would be almost hidden from you. And then it's got a very flat nose. So if you think of the way like a dog's nose is shaped, its eyes kind of come down and there's like a concave point where its nose sticks out. Grizzly bears are going to have a nose like that. Black bears are going to have this very flat, sometimes called Roman nose. And so between the ears and the nose, this is very clearly a black bear. Did you guys get it right? Did you get the question right? If you did, we will be contacting the winner, who is Lee Bowen, by the way, from Texas. Congratulations, Lee. I'm super happy that you won for last week's trivia question. Okay, so here's the big one. Here's your chance to win your gift card. This is the question this week. I would like to know, what species is this an X-ray of the head of? Now, this is an animal that lives in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. It's a wild animal, and this is the upper right part of its head. So for those of you guys who don't necessarily know a ton of my background, I'm a wildlife biologist, but I'm also a veterinary technician. And a number of years ago, I was able to get the use of a very high-powered X-ray machine for an art project, because I'm also an artist. And I have been X-raying skulls of the wildlife, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Eventually, I hope to put it up on some kind of an educational display somewhere. Somebody has a great idea of where I can put up these prints in an educational way, let me know. But in the meantime, I thought it'd be fun to show you this one because we talked about this animal a lot this week. So go ahead and comment in the comments section what animal this is the upper right corner of. This is an X-ray of a large animal of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Hopefully most folks can get a good guess there. We'll go ahead and tell you what it is next week during our next week's broadcast, but in the meantime, comment in the comment section. You'll get a chance to win a gift card to our store. So pretty fun stuff. Did you guys like the videos this week? Did you have fun? I had a lot of fun. Now's my favorite part of the whole thing. I'm here to answer your questions live. So if you've got a natural history related question, wildlife biology, greater Yellowstone ecosystem, whatever you want to ask me. If you want to ask me about lions in Africa, I'll give it my best shot. Kangaroos or whatever it is. If you've got kids in the house and they've got a question they'd like to ask a wildlife biologist, I love answering questions from kids. If you've got an astronomy related question, I'll see if I can't answer that as well. If I don't know your answer, I promise we'll look it up. We'll get it to you in the comment section sometime this week. If you are watching this from not watching this live, watching later, and you've got a question, go ahead and ask it in the comment section, and I'll be answering questions all week as well. But in the meantime, bear with me. I've got my iPad here, and I'm going to take a look at our questions. So I have to kind of look down for a minute, and I'll start answering them. So give me just one sec here. Hang on, getting there. Lots of people answering our trivia question correct. Thanks very much. Jan asks, why are the horns on male and female bison different? Well, Jan, that's a really good question. Now, we can't just go up to a bison, tap it on the shoulder, and say, hey, why do you guys have different shaped horns? Now, for those of you guys who weren't here earlier or didn't get a chance to catch it, males have L-shaped horns, if you think of like an L, sort of L-shaped horns, and then females have more C or curved shaped horns, so that would be female. So male, female, male, female. If you're trying to see them in the wild, it's a great way to tell the difference. I would tell you ergonomically, biologists have certainly looked at horn shape and we've found a few things. The L-shaped horns protrude further from the head. They're more visible. For an animal who is trying to show off his prowess, a male bison, impress the females, build up a harem of them to breed, you certainly want to have a good display, right? So having something a little further out from your head is probably more inconvenient from day to day, but probably more beneficial for breeding season. The females, their horns are a little closer to their heads, which is probably easier to live with. It's more ergonomic. It's certainly easier on the weight on their heads. It also probably doesn't get hit by trees and get in the way. Since they don't need it for display, they need it for protection. Certainly would make sense theirs would be a little closer in. In terms of the pointiness of the horns, it is identical. They're both able to perfectly defend themselves, whether it's L's or C's. So there's some debate on maybe L's are better for males fighting other males in terms of them interlocking, and C's are not as good for that, but maybe the C-shaped horn is better for defense against predators. Hard to prove that. There's been some interesting things that have been done to kind of look into that, but until we can talk to bison, we can just make some educated guesses. So Gianna, I hope I answered that question for you. Let's see what else we've got here. Rosemary asks, are the lupine butterflies indigenous to Yellowstone? Yes, they are. Indigenous to quite a bit of the Rocky Mountain West, going all the way up into the Northern Rockies, into Alberta and British Columbia, into Canada. You can sort of see them as a wide swath. They really love high altitude, wet environments. So if you can find a creek, not above tree line, but kind of up high on like a hillside, they love to come down and drink from that moisture. They, of course, rely on flowers as they are pollinators. They particularly like, well, blue butterflies in general tend to like white flowers. So if you're looking for them, those can be two kind of ways to see them. They are beautiful, and they're not terribly uncommon in July here in Grand Teton. So if you end up being in the valley this summer, keep your eyes open, particularly if you're near a creek or you're a little bit up high. I like to, for instance, go up on Teton Pass is a great way to see them in places like Phillips Canyon. I'm not sure where Sean actually got that footage. I didn't ask him. But long story short, if you'd like to see butterflies of any type, water and flowers, moisture and flowers are key. I actually have a bunch of wildflowers planted in my front yard of my house. I dug a lot of them out of the National Forest, and I get lots of butterflies that way that are native to the area. So that's another way to do it as well. Even where you live, go out onto public land with a permit and dig up some of your local flowers and help the butterflies out. So thanks for that, Libby. Oh, sorry, Rosemary. Libby loved the butterflies, but Rosemary had the question. Let's see what we've got. Sandra asks, does the extreme heat affect wildlife? That is a really good question, Sandra. Yes, very much so it does. It has been really hot for us this week. Now, for those of you guys who live in the southern part of the United States, I'm going to tell you how hot it is, and you're not going to feel sorry for me, but it's really hot for us. It's been in like the high 80s, guys, like 88, 89 degrees, and oh my goodness, that's really hot. It's like 70 to 75 degrees every day in the summer here. So when it gets warm like that, we all certainly get hot. But the animals most at risk of getting themselves in trouble are animals really built for winter conditions, northern species. So certainly moose are at risk of heat exhaustion for anything above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it's above 80 degrees, particularly if it's above 85 degrees, it's very common to see moose either neck deep in a pond trying to stay cool or panting deep in the willows. It's very, very hard for them. Other species affected by heat would be things like pika, which is a high altitude type of rabbit. They really have a hard time staying cool when it gets that warm. They're used to very high alpine cool conditions. But any one of our mammal species is going to find it pretty hard. Many of our mammals only shed their coats once a year. So animals and mammals that live in southern climates or even mid-latitudes are going to have two coats, a winter coat and a summer coat. But a lot of our species will shed in the spring and then build their winter coat all summer and fall until the winter happens, and then they'll live through the winter with that nice thick coat and then shed it again in the spring. And what that can mean is they're building their winter coat in the summer. And sure, they're not done building it, but that can get really, really hot. It takes a little less energy to build one coat, but they have to build a bigger coat than some of these southern and mid-altitude climes can do. So yes, the heat can absolutely affect quite a few different species. Some exceptions are animals well adapted to the plains in the southern states. Things like bison do just fine in the heat. They're able to pant very effectively. They have sweat glands that they can use. Moose, by the way, can only sweat under their hooves. They have almost no ability to stay cool. So depends a little bit on the species, but certainly, yes, our version of heat, which is like in the 80s, would be very, very dangerous. For some species, anything in the 90s, we'd be pretty seriously concerned unless they were able to stay cool with a water source. So yeah, the heat affects everybody, whether you're a human who's built for warmer temperatures or a moose who's built for cooler. So thanks very much for that question. Dawn asks, any Wolverines spotted lately? Dawn, absolutely no. We have not seen any Wolverines spotted lately. I've never actually seen a Wolverine in my life. It's one of my goals. I've never seen a Wolverine and I've never seen a Canada lynx. Both species are present here in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but they'd both be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see them. Most common Wolverine sightings happen in the winter time, generally above tree line. People who most commonly see Wolverines are actually backcountry skiers because they're up on top of the Teton peaks where Wolverines live. Wolverines rely on carrion in the winter, which becomes frozen. So particularly bighorn sheep who make mistakes, fall off the cliff, that'll feed the Wolverine for most of the winter. That's way, way high, above 10,000 feet typically to see those guys. We also have very, very few Wolverines left. I don't have hard numbers for you on this because nobody does, but there's a lot of folks who are big lovers of the weasel family. Remember, Wolverine's a type of weasel, the biggest type of weasel, who are very worried about Wolverines. They are not listed as an endangered species. And the reason they're not listed as an endangered species is because nobody can figure out how many are left. But I've heard numbers as low as less than 80 in the entire continental United States. I've heard numbers a little bit higher than that perhaps, but these are educated guesses by biologists. There's probably no question they probably need to be an endangered species in terms of recovery. But we also don't know how many Wolverines there are supposed to be. How many Wolverines were there before heavy human use of the environment? Hard to say. It's very hard to find a Wolverine to begin with, much less a breeding Wolverine. Wolverines don't have true necks. You can't put a radio collar or receiver on them. There have been some studies that have been done with Wolverines where they put a small receiver chip under the skin, but they want to be really limited in that. They certainly wouldn't want to cause infection, and the battery life of that kind of a chip is very, very short, so we have just a couple days to a week at a time of data for our Wolverines. The Northern Rockies Conservation Cooperative is the nonprofit working the hardest for Wolverines in the Rocky Mountains. If you want to know more about that, getting on their website, maybe Elise can send us, put a link up, is a great way to find a little bit more about them, how you can help them, how you can contribute as a citizen to the scientific data about Wolverines. But I really would like to see some growing consensus about quite a few species in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem that are so rare that there's a lot of concern that they'll just fall under the radar. And Wolverines are one of them. If we don't pay attention and really get to know what's going on with Wolverines, there's a risk we could maybe lose them as a species in this area, if not in the United States as a whole. So thanks very much about your question about Wolverines. Trail cameras are generally another great way that we'll see Wolverines. One day I'm going to see one in the flesh. It's going to happen. But I've been warned by my colleagues who have seen one. It's like a 5-second view. Great question about Wolverines. Don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but a lot of concern about that as a species. Let's see what else we've got here. Rosemary asks, will you be doing any more on entomology, in particular butterflies in the future? Yeah, Rosemary. You want to know why I haven't done a lot on insects and butterflies? Because nobody's been commenting that they like insects and butterflies. I am a huge entomology nerd, and I would love to talk more about it. So if that's something that interests you, tell me in the comment section. I absolutely will do more on butterflies and insects. I find them fascinating, particularly pollinating insects like butterflies. They are so much fun, and we have such an amazing diversity here in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So I would love to, but remember, we make these videos to order. So if there's something you'd like to see, other than maybe a Wolverine, I think we'd have a hard time getting that for you. Comment in the comment section. People have been telling me they want to see moose and bison and grizzly and wolves. They haven't been saying butterflies, so I've only been featuring them occasionally. But now that Rosemary says she wants to see one, I'll definitely do some more for you guys. Absolutely. Let me see if we've got any other questions here. Gosh, I think that's everything, everybody. It's been so much fun to spend this week with you. I hope you all have a wild week and you join us one of these days in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. In the meantime, stay cool, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.